Today we're taking a look at the Bee35 Pro with LED, a cinewhoop that promises to carry a full-size action camera and deliver smooth cinematic images. Now I've done tons of reviews on cinewhoops in the past week, and we'll see how this one here compares. So let's get this assembled and see how it flies. Okay, so here are the parts for today's build, starting off with the frame. This is the Bee35 cinewhoop frame. This is the Pro version, and the Pro version comes with an updated heatsink, allowing you to run longer durations and higher power output on your VTX. This thing will keep your VTX cool, and this is probably a worthy upgrade. Now, this Pro model also comes with this Cobb LED right here. This is the SpeedyBee LED, and this is not your traditional LED in the fact that this one here can change colors and show multiple patterns while you're flying. So I'm pretty excited to test this out and see how it looks. Now, the heart of any drone is the flight control and ESC setup. Today we're going with the SpeedyBee F4 version 4. Now, this flight controller stack packs a pretty good punch and tons of features. It also has a 55 amp ESC, which is more than enough for this cinewhoop right here. In fact, it might be recommended to get the F4 mini stack that they offer. Now, I've done full reviews on the F4 mini as well as this full-size stack, so you can take a look at it and see which one is better for your configuration. Now, moving on to the motors, we have the SpeedyBee 2006 1950 kV motors, and these are actually the recommended motors or size for this cinewhoop. Now, as you can tell by the kV values, this is going to be a 6S build, and we'll see how that affects the performance as well as our battery life. Now, moving on to the visuals, today we'll be using the Caddx Vista for our VTX, and attached to it is the Caddx Polar camera, which is really good for nighttime performance, and we'll see if we can fly this drone outside in the nighttime, also because we have this LED strip right here. Now, last but not least, we have our accessories, including our propellers, which is a tri-blade propeller by HQ, as well as our receiver. Today, we're gonna be going with an Express LRS receiver. And last but not least, we talked about the Cobb LED right here, which is pretty cool. And I'm actually kind of excited to see how this thing here looks. This thing is very cool, it has multiple patterns. So we'll see how this thing here fits and see how it works. Let's go to the workbench, get all this stuff in the drone, and see how it flies. Okay, so we're here at the workbench. We have all our parts here. Now, there's a lot of parts involved in this build specifically, so keeping organized is gonna be the key to success with this one. We'll see how it goes. All right, so let's get this frame out of here, and then you have even more parts to put out here. Okay, so the first thing I wanna do is just get this frame here sorted, and then get my flight controller on this frame. Really cool. So we gotta figure out the front. This looks like the front right here with these two holes for the camera. And then here's the front of the frame. So this thing is a pusher configuration, so this is going to be on top like this eventually, and then you're gonna have your props and your motors right down here. So here's your Pro version frame right here. This is the heat sink that's gonna dissipate the heat from your VTX. And I think that's the first thing I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna try to cover up the bottom and then stack it up this way. So we have our Caddx Vista. And it's kind of weird because I usually build or put the VTX almost last in there, and today we're gonna go first. So it's a little bit different, but that's the way I'm gonna do it. I have a hole right here, a punch out for the USB-C connector, and that's how I'm gonna orient this VTX on this. Perfect. Now, if you notice on my VTX here, we'll talk about it right now. We'll have to talk about it eventually anyways. These old school or version 1 VTX by DJI, they don't have a plug and play harness like the 03. This one here, I did have to hardwire it, but my other end does have the end that goes into the flight controller. This is gonna minimize the soldering, and I do highly recommend if your flight controller has one of these plugs, you just attach it to it so it's easier for the install. Just gonna go straight like this. All right, so we're gonna attach these. These are gonna be attached via standoffs. All right, so I'm gonna put the standoffs in here. The standoffs are in here, and these are gonna go right into those holes. I think I lost one already. 3, and the 4th one is right here. That one's very loose. We'll get that one last. And we have to get the right bolts for them. Perfect. Since we're here, I'm just gonna attach the front camera mount as well, since we have the 2 bolts right here. As I said, I didn't intend to do that this soon. It's so weird assembling the drone before doing any electronics. Amazing. And the camera's just gonna go in here, but we'll leave that for later only because, wow, is that gonna reach? I don't know if that's gonna reach, guys. Man, the joys of building, these unexpected things happen is so weird. So the big thing here is this frame right here, this carbon fiber frame, and we get to put our stacks on this. As I said before in the intro here, when we went over the parts, these are pretty big. These are the full-size components. If you get a mini stack, it might be better. Theoretically, we're gonna put this on here first and then stack it. So we're gonna have our connections or our power leads facing rear so we can get out through here on the top. And let's just put these bolts through here. And these are the perfect length for both the ESC and the flight controller. And there you go. You just have the right amount of threads here. Let's see if we can put a nut on it. All right, here's your stack. And this all goes into this right here. So if I invert this right here, everything should fit in here pretty easily. Boom. Pretty nice. And this mounts to the front. So now the question is it touching my VTX? I don't think so. It's close, it's very close. Now the cool thing about that, everything can be assembled on this and then we can just stuff this into these actual ducts. And that should be an easy way of doing it. I might put some tape on this so that this isn't touching the electronics and gonna short out. Now we have to work on the actual frame here, and this is the part that we always dread because there's a lot of soldering. As usual, the first thing we're gonna do is put the power leads in here, and I do think that there's adequate space for a capacitor. I have my capacitor and my XT60 connector on here. I think we'll do the capacitor first. It's gonna be very, very close. Wow. That's how I plan to do it. This thing is freaking huge though. Jesus. This is a huge, oh shit. I don't think this capacitor can fit in here. All right, let me figure this out and then I'll let you know how I got this thing in here. Okay, so I finally have this figured out. This capacitor here is just a little bit too big. This thing is really, really huge, which makes sense for a 6S build, especially a flight controller and stack of this size. And it's just a little bit too big for this setup here. Now we're talking about an enclosed area here with this drone. And there's very minimal space in here. And this is all exponentially worse only because we're using a full-size stack on here. As I said before in the beginning, I would recommend you use a mini stack. Now, this stack here can work, it's just that it's really tight and you really have to accommodate the space in here. So I did decide to go an alternate route and go with a lead or pigtail here with a capacitor built into it. I ordered one of these. I also ordered a longer lead for my Caddx Vista. As you know before, the original lead, if I can find it, this original lead here was a little bit too short. It just couldn't reach the front. So I did have a longer lead and that worked out pretty good. So although this doesn't come with the kit and they want you to put the actual capacitor in the drone, we have no option but to put it on the outside or use a smaller capacitor. I'd rather have the larger capacitor with the lead built into it, and that's the way we're gonna go. So this should free up a lot more space and give us the ability to run this full-size stack in this drone. And as you can see, it's gonna fit pretty well. We're just gonna have the wires come out through here, which was originally intended for. Now that we have this all here figured out, we're just gonna take these screws off, take the flight controller off, and start soldering the leads. All right, so here we go. This thing gets hot pretty fast. All right, that worked out. All right, so that looks good. Let's get these motors out of here. First time seeing these. That's a fancy presentation. Let's mount this thing. Let's see this one here. All right, that looks good. Let's do the others and see how that goes. Okay, so we have our power lead connected to the ESC. We also have our motors installed to the frame, cut to length, and also soldered to the ESC. Not too bad, this thing turned out pretty nice and clean, so no worries here. So let's move on to the flight controller. And the first thing I want to do is install the receiver, and the last thing would be the actual LED lights. So we'll start off with the receiver first. All right, Receiver is installed. That looks really nice and neat. And let's now do the LED. Now I have two pads here, a ground and a battery or VBAT. Now here's the LED here by SpeedyBee. This thing, typically you would want to attach this to a 5-volt pad or maybe to the LED pad. Now this one here requires a 2 to 6S volt, and they require or recommend the actual voltage pad. So that's what we're gonna do since this is a 6S drone. That should be adequate in the range. And I don't know if a 5-volt pad would be enough. And this thing came with a harness, so that's pretty cool. All I have to do is just put the other harness on the flight controller, and then I think we should be able to plug and play this thing. It's a pretty cool setup here, guys. This thing is really cool. This LED, it does multiple things. It's also a boot button. So once you install this in here, and depending on your flight controller, you can change this up. But in this case, since we are going to use the SpeedyBee app, and this is also a Bluetooth flight controller, all I have to do is provide voltage and ground, and that's it. Now you have a third color on here, this yellow one, and that's like the boot button. And once you connect this to the flight controller, then if you want to say flash your flight controller, then you can hit this button on here, and that would simulate the boot button on your actual flight controller, which is right here actually. So if this is encased in your actual drone, you have an external boot button, so you can put this into DFU mode and be able to flash it. Let's see if I can get this one in here. These pads are close. That's perfect. Here we go, right there. That's pretty good. All right, I think I'm comfortable enough to put that off. And just like any other build, once the soldering is done, I'm happy. All right, so here's the harness for the LED, and here's the receiver. I need to put my antenna on this and then shrink wrap it. So that's what we're gonna do next. All right, so that's good. That's pretty cool. All right, let's clean this up since we're finished with most of this. So let's put the flight controller on, screw this on, and put it into the actual ducts. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, so that's that. Now we can put the nuts on the bolts here and go from there and see if this all fits. So we're just gonna put this in here. All right, and then there's a groove for this, so we can route all our stuff in here. That makes more sense now. All right, so a few things here. I want to get one more done, and it's just one right here. This goes to the flight controller, USB-C. There's two different types, a USB-C and a micro USB, depending if you have an older flight controller or not. We have a newer flight controller with USB-C, so we're gonna pull out the USB-C converter or harness, and this allows you to plug into your flight controller for Betaflight firmware updates while having the flight controller buried in here. All right, that's cool that they thought about that. I'm just gonna plug this in. All right, we're almost there. Now it's just time to put this in here. That was a tight fit. It's all coming together though. I mean, it's all in here now. My biggest concern is flight controller, was touching the flight controller, but I think it's all in there. All right, so let's see if we can even get one to hold. Okay, we got one to hold, perfect. I laugh only because it wasn't an easy build, and I still don't know if it's going to work, only because, well, let's be honest, there's a lot in here. All right, so let's put this in here. Repairs on this drone doesn't look like it's going to be the easiest, that's for sure. Okay, let's try to install this camera in here. We have the mounts right here. This is the one for the 19mm. I already have one set in here. There's some grooves on here to match up with the actual frame. Perfect, I think that one made it through. All right, so camera's in, or at least FPV camera's in. The only thing left to do is put this top plate on here for the battery strap and then the props. Flip this way, and let's see if we can do this. All right, that's in there. All right, and then the last one, where are you? All right. Okay, so we have our props on. Looks really nice, actually. Looks really good. Looks like a drone, finally. And last but not least, we just want to put the actual LED strips on here. It's pretty simple. We've done all the hard work to make this work. Here's your harness here for your LED. And we're just gonna plug this in and then route this in here. All right, that looks good. Now I have to shove it back in there. Perfect. Now the last one here is a self tap in screw, and they give it to you right here. It's gonna be really hard. All right, time to run this LED strip around. It's gonna be hard to get it in the groove while having this adhesion on here. Wow, that took me a while to get that. All right, so we're done. LEDs are in. This thing is feeling very hefty. Last but not least is the top plate for the battery strap. This looks like it's gonna go this way, so this looks like the right way to do it. We have our bolts right here, the only one we haven't used. These are the M3x9. There's 5 of them, we need only 4. These are countersunk bolts as well. Good. That goes around like this, looks good. And then we have our non-slip battery mat. We'll put that right here as well. All right, that turned out really nice. Non-slip battery mat. And boom, SpeedyBee. There it is, hard to see. Let's make it a little bit darker here. I like it. Well, it's done. Here it is, the B35. Okay, so we got DJI in here, we have LED, we have this mount here for the action camera. This is a very hefty drone. So let's weigh it. Let's put it on here, the B35. 356 grams. So, not bad, it looks good. But yeah, this thing was a tight fit, but it looks really, really nice. And I'm glad that we're done with this build. So next video, we're gonna take it for a flight and see how it flies. So if you wanna see that video, hit that subscribe button there for you to be notified whenever I do drop that video. So thanks for sticking around this long, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.